My first question is about enlightenment. I've studied a lot of different teachers, and a lot of them talk about enlightenment, and some of them talk about how all the desires we have on the physical level, some of them say it's fine to have them, but
good, because you can't help it.
Right.
The entire universe is established to provide them. You are on the leading edge of thought. You better get in the flow of that.
Right. Some of them say behind every physical desire is this deep longing for, they have different names for it, but what many call enlightenment. And I want to understand this more.
Well, we can tell you. Let's
and
first.
What the other part about it is some of them say when you get into this state, then you no longer need to incarnate. And I wonder about that. And I also wonder, is enlightenment just alignment, what you speak of?
Well, first of all, we have to say to you that there is nothing that could be less accurate than the statement that incarnation is for the less enlightened. Mm-hmm. Because incarnation is the leading edge. Where do they get this stuff?
Well, these are a lot of other channeled beings too, and I wonder.
Really. There's not a shred of evidence anywhere in your universe to support that. Let's talk about what enlightenment is. Okay. Enlightenment is the allowing of the light. Mm-hmm. Enlightenment is the allowing of the energy that is source. Enlightenment is the raising of vibration. Enlightenment is what we've been talking about here. It's moving up this vibrational meter, you see. And so one day we were visiting with someone who proposed a similar situation. And they were talking about someone who had counseled them to release their desires because their desires were heavy and bulky by the perspective of this counselor. And they were encouraged to release their desires for these worldly things. And we said, and what is the reason for you to do that? Why are they encouraging you to do that? And they said, because then I will be more enlightened. And we said, and then what? And they said, and then I will feel more joy. And we said, is not joy a desire? Mm-hmm. Is not joy the ultimate desire, you see? And so you can't have it both ways. You can't say, we acknowledge that there are a lot of physical humans that are trying to make it both ways by making the list of appropriate desires here and the list of inappropriate desires here. But desires are either appropriate or they are not. And we have to say to you, desire is the first summoning of that which is source. It is inherent in the eternalness that we all are. In fact, it is so significant that all of you said, I want to go forth into this contrasting time-space reality so that the desire can be inspired within me. And when it is born, whether I speak about it or not, there will be summoning power on my behalf that occurs. In other words, the universe is established this way. And the greatest grief that we see anywhere in the universe is right here in this leading edge humandom of physical experience where people are trying to resist the desires that are naturally born.
A lot of teachers say that behind the physical desire is a deeper desire for what they call enlightenment. I'm wondering, is enlightenment...
Can you feel, in light of what we were talking about here today, did you hear us say that you may be here and you may want more money, or you may be here without a relationship that you want and you may want a relationship, but really what you are wanting is the way you think you will feel when you achieve it? And so we believe that many of them, that's what they're getting at, is that this enlightenment is the raising of one's vibration into alignment with that which you really are, so that you can then be the clear, full extension of that source energy that is really you. And we are in agreement with much of what your teachers have been saying to you, that unless you are tending to your alignment first, then there is not much joy to be experienced. And we see so many who are not allowing themselves vibrational alignment with who they are and who we are. We think that the reason that sometimes it is misunderstood that, and here is the misunderstanding. There are many who recognize, because they can feel you when you are in your connection. And when you are standing here and you want to be over there, and you are feeling frustration about not being over there, that frustration is an evidence of resistance, and that is not a state of enlightenment. That's not a state of full connection. And so we can understand how a teacher would then assume that if you could release that desire, that then you would release that friction, and in releasing the friction, then you would be in a place of greater enlightenment. We notice that when you are in a place of contentment where your desire is not really keenly focused, and therefore there is no active resistance within your vibration, that you are in a better feeling place. And we think that that really is what they are getting at. They too are wanting to assist you in releasing your resistance so that you can be in absolute alignment with who you really are. What we are wanting to say emphatically, however, is that the path to less resistance is not about releasing desire. The path to less resistance is about releasing resistance. And there's a big difference, you see. And you will never be able to release your desires because they keep being born again. You cannot live in an environment where you can speculate and conclude without preferences being born. It is the nature of all consciousness, you see. It is the nature of the expanding universe. And so we were a little harsh. We were wanting to be playful because we understand that they are very well-meaning. But often there is a misinterpretation of that. And that's what we meant when we say there is not a shred of evidence anywhere to the contrary that this is other than an expanding universe. And we know that the reason that it expands is because asking keeps being born. We understand that this universe is attraction-based. It is inclusion-based. There is no assertion, you see. Where the premise that seems to be purported by part of what you were at least projecting here is that there must be some God somewhere who understands what well-being is and where it is, and that you should have some and is wanting to assert it to you and is wanting to decide for you. And we say, your experience causes the culmination of your desire, and your desire summons source energy. And that's just the way this universe expands.
So enlightenment for me is my experience of joy in the moment?
Well, enlightenment is described in different ways by different people. It's another one of those words that means different things to different people. But enlightenment is alignment with source. And alignment with source always feels good. Mm-hmm. And what we would like to interject here, in fact, it is the whole science of deliberate creation attitude, that when you are in alignment with source, when you are tuned in, tapped in, turned on, that means you have found something in your physical sphere that has activated a desire within you, and you've got big time summoning power happening. And the reason that you are so enlivened or enlightened is because the desire that you have discovered is summoning life force through you. That's what life is, you see. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we would not try to separate enlightenment from enlivenment, from connection, from allowing, from high vibration, from pure fast vibration, from absence of resistance. We think it is all the same thing.
So these other entities that are channeled, are they different perspectives of the greater consciousness? How are they? Well,
we have to say to you that for the most part, what we believe is happening is the energy that is being translated is either being misunderstood or possibly misinterpreted. In other words, we also always like to say that sometimes someone will bring a book or something and they will present to us something that they have received from the book. And we have to acknowledge that everyone who reads the book receives it a little differently. In other words, there's really no right or wrong in anything. We are just not really eager to get into any kind of agreement with anyone that it's a good idea to curb desires. First, because it isn't possible, and second, because you are creators who have come forth to project your desires. It's backwards, you see. And we think that what has happened, that the majority of cases that you're talking about, it's some well-meaning being who is trying to make people feel better, and they've discovered that they feel better by pulling back their desire. But what we notice is they cannot hold their desire back. Desire is so natural, it keeps cropping up.
Is there greater, sometimes it feels like there's greater consciousness and lesser consciousness, but is it just greater resistance and more allowing?
The consciousness is what the consciousness is, and you are allowing as much of it as you are summoning and allowing. In other words, there are two factors in the attraction and allowance of everything. One is how much do you want it, and the other is how much are you allowing what you are wanting. And so there are many factors. Sometimes you can feel it even in a group like this. Abraham being a fairly constant entity. We are group consciousness, but we are gathered in response to what mass consciousness is asking. But even in a group like this, you can sometimes feel rampant enthusiasm as more join in, and less enthusiasm, depending upon the topic. At a gathering recently, people came to Jerry and Esther and reported all through the day that there were a host of non-physical beings that they were seeing dancing on the wall behind Esther. And we said, the gang's all here. In other words, everyone eager to participate. And so there is a variable, but the variable is based upon those who are asking. The variable is about the intensity and clarity of your asking and the intensity and clarity of your allowing. That is the factor that varies. Source does not vary.
So there's not like greater intelligence in the universe and lesser. There's just how much a perspective is allowing through.
You have to understand what questions have been asked too. It's like we were talking earlier, that when you use someone else's standard, you get all mixed up. That's why we're encouraging each of you to use your own meter in order to know the validity. Because you could read something and misunderstand what was being represented totally, but in your misunderstanding, it might fit for you. Or in your misunderstanding, it might not fit for you. In other words, there's no right or wrong. And the reason for that is because everyone is creating their own reality.
Yeah.
So we know it's hard. Esther said, as she first began receiving us, as she would hear, different people would come to her with different things. It was a very common thing, especially on a segment of refreshment. Someone would come to Esther with some challenging something. They would say, well, Abraham says this, but somebody else says that. And Esther said, Abraham, why can't you guys get your story straight? It seems like it'd be ever so much easier if everyone would respond in the same way. And we said, if everyone were asking the same question, then all of the answers would be the same. But people are at different places of resistance, different places of wanting to know, you see. Mm-hmm. So we are not wanting to defend our philosophy against anyone else's, because we believe that they are all well-meaning. But what we are really about is encouraging you to get hold of your own meter, so that you can evaluate the appropriateness or inappropriateness of the impression that you are focusing. In other words, sometimes you misunderstand what the book means. Sometimes somebody says that somebody says something that nobody ever even said. Buddha is being quoted in all kinds of irrational ways. Jesus is not even being expressed even close to the way that he was actually expressing. It's a strange thing how physical humans are born. You have guidance within them that lets you know your in-the-moment connection to all that is, to that which is your source, and instead you prefer to dig up some relic that has been buried and retranslated hundreds, if not thousands of times through the selfish motives of others, and then you use it to try to guide your life. And we say, why would you do that? Why would you not tune in to the information that comes forth from within you and forget about what anybody else is saying? We would love it if you would leave this room and someone said, what did you learn? And you say, I learned not to listen to anyone, even to Abraham. Abraham helped me to know that I have within me the ability to know the appropriateness or the inappropriateness of my thought, word, or deed in any moment. And I will discover my true enlightenment by feeling my way to my alignment.